Good morning, everyone. This is Katie Giardello with the Michigan Center for Student Success. Nice to see everybody logging in. It looks like we're all here. We may get a few people coming in here in the next minute or so. And I'm just thrilled that we're kicking off this project in Michigan. My assumption as we move through this morning's program is that most of you have at least a general understanding of the METC campus and what our project entails. But we recognize that this is the first formal program in the project. So we will have time at the end if you have questions for either the presenters who are talking through the process-oriented steps that they took to become Degree Bridge partners, or for myself as the project coordinator person. And I also wanted to share with everyone that we are delighted that our colleague Keith Hall from the METC campus is also logged in today. So if there are questions that come up at the end that might be more appropriate for Keith to answer, he doesn't know that I'm doing this, but I might put him on the spot at the end. And I will have the ability to unmute at the end if it seems like we need to have some verbal dialogue instead of just commenting via chat, which is how we will typically engage today. As we attend to those technical details, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I want you to know that we're recording today's program. I think I made that clear to the project lead so that you would have the opportunity to forward a link and the recording onto your campus teams and utilize the material as you're coming together to pull your plan together for the project. So we are recording, we're already doing so. And in order to engage with us, as I already shared, you'll typically be using the question or the chat box on your control panel. And just to make sure everybody knows where their control panel is and that things are working properly, there's a little hand button in where you can engage as an attendee. If you're hearing me fine and you can see where you should be talking via chat or question box, can you raise your hand and let me know that that is intuitive? Thank you. You're all raising your hands. This is a really nice way for me to also feel like you're high-fiving me. So thank you for that positive affirmation. And I'm giving you a high five right back through the airwaves here. Perfect. Well, this morning, we are delighted to have a couple of folks on the line presenting with us, in addition to having our METC colleague and then all of you who are participating in the project on the line. My colleague, Dr. Erica Oriens, who is the Executive Director for the Michigan Center for Student Success, is also on the line today. And I'll extend my gratitude to Erica for the center taking this work on and continuing the plight to articulate credit for military training. I am thrilled to be able to continue working with all of you on this work and really excited about where this project is going in Michigan. This morning, we've got some pretty clear objectives. My colleague, Dr. Julie Lavender from Kirtland Community College, serves as the Academic Credit Chair for the Consortium of Michigan Veterans Educators, CMVE, as you all should know it in Michigan. And she will be kicking things off with her discussion of how Kirtland got connected to becoming a METC Degree Bridge partner. She has an Army background, so I'm sure she'll share more about that. And her and her husband were involved in the kind of upbringing of METC, if you will, several years ago. Similarly, Dr. Richard Arona from Purdue University's Global Campus is on the line along with one of his colleagues from the records office there. And they're going to talk about their process-oriented scripts for creating new METC Degree Bridge programs. And I think that that will be very helpful to all of you as you make your plans for this project. And then we do have some next steps that we'll discuss at the end, and we've got hopefully plenty of time for questions that we can have toward the end there. Okay, so we're going to keep on rolling. If you previously participated in our intro webinar over the summer, some of this is a refresher for you, but the project materials also explained. Our goal is pretty simple. METC already has an established process to becoming a degree completion partner with their organization. We intend to guide you along with their support in following that protocol to become new Degree Bridge partners here in Michigan. You can see the flags there where they already have those partnerships built throughout the country. And our goal is to cover the Michigan name on the mitten. We want so many of those flags that you can't even read it. Just kidding. You should still know that that's the state, but we do want to just create more of these programs and provide more opportunities for service members to pursue their education, whether they're still enlisted or post-military service. This is a refresher as well. This is our plan for the project, and I should have gone in and put those dates in for our webinars, but those of you who received the project invitation have all of the materials you need for the time and date of the webinars, and as well as how to register online for each of those webinars. Just like this one, we will be recording them so that you all can share that with anyone on your team who is not able to participate live. And we're hoping that what we have provided in the webinar for technical assistance and professional development is helpful to your team as you move forward with your objectives in the project. I've been pretty clear about the deadline. In order to receive the stipend that comes with this project, campuses must submit the required materials to METC by February 1st of next year. And then if you've already reviewed your invitation letter and the corresponding MOU, you know that we're also asking for a short final report by March 15th of 2019. And we will utilize that information to help us compile a brief on this project and hopefully share out with our colleagues more details about how they can get involved in the work after the project ends. I think that's it, and it is my pleasure now to introduce, oh wait, just kidding, it's not it. My last slide here is that I am delighted that we have 10 institutions in Michigan working together to facilitate these new partnerships in Michigan, and your peers that will be stepping alongside you in this community of practice, the peer institutions anyway, are on the screen here. We have 9 community colleges and 1 brave university that are stepping along with this work, and again, I just could not be more thrilled. We have a nice diversity of program areas. There are a few areas that overlap, which might be helpful if you want to work on this together between institutions. But it's also great to see that there are a variety of program areas that you have interest in building these articulations for. So we are thrilled that you're joining us, and we look forward to helping you share your story of participating in this project in that brief that will be published afterwards. Okay, really, that's it for me. The last items I will be responsible for as we move forward is interrupting the presenters if you ask questions while they're speaking. Typically, we'll hold those to the end, but if your questions are germane to the topic at hand, I have already let the presenters know I will rudely interrupt them and share your questions so that we can address it in a timely manner. You're also welcome to submit anything via chat if you're having any trouble with the webinar technology, but hopefully things move forward as planned, and I can now turn it over to Dr. Julie Lavender to introduce herself and get started with her own remarks. Julie?
Thanks, Katie. Good morning, everyone. This is Julie Lavender from Kirtland Community College, and I thought I would just start with giving you a little bit of background of who I am so that you know my interest in this project and also my background, so that if you have questions that you think I might be able to help with a little bit more, it helps that you understand where I'm coming from. And I thought I would just share this picture with you because it's a little more exciting than just words on the page about who I am. This is just from this past summer. I was able to do a tandem jump with the Army Golden Knights, and it was very exciting and thrilling and a little bit scary. Anyway, so who I am the Vice President of Instruction at Kirtland, and so that gives me the knowledge that I need to understand curriculum and processes that are involved in curriculum review, curriculum development, also in partnership programs. But more importantly, the reason I am so tied to this project and why it has become a real passion of mine is I'm a veteran myself. As Katie mentioned, my husband is also a veteran. He's retired from the Army after 29 years, and he was intimately involved in the development of METC. I was there at the time as well, just because I lived at Fort Sam Houston, and I was working for the Air Force at the time. So my background in terms of military, I was an Army medic, and then I got out and went through ROTC and came back in as an Army nurse. So I did experience a little bit of what it's like to have some military training and not get any college credit for it and have to just basically start from scratch, although I was able to take a lot of my prerequisite work while I was on active duty, but basically having to go through a full program. So I understand the importance of maybe giving people a little bit more credit for what they've done and recognizing that they should maybe have some advanced standing in some of our programs. In terms of curriculum with the military, I have a pretty good understanding of the medical curriculum development process because I worked for a little over a year with the Army in a project to reconfigure their entire LPN program. So I was with 2 other contractors that took the lead on developing a new and revised, which has probably been revised again since then, but the Army LPN program. Also, I worked as a contractor while I was in San Antonio with the Air Force as an education and training officer for them. So again, I got some really good knowledge about Air Force medical occupations, and so I have a pretty good understanding of those as well, and knowing the training that they go through as well as the work experience they go through to then be able to recognize how we could give credit for some of that education and experience. Next slide. So briefly, the Medical Education and Training Campus is the main location now for all military medical initial training anyways. It's located in San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and Rich and Adam, when they get to their section, they're going to give you a little bit more in-depth information about METC, and I'll tell you a little bit in my part how this process at Kirtland of developing a partnership began with a visit to METC. Katie's got some good links for you there. One thing I did want to let everyone know, though, is the first time or on a different computer, if you go to the METC website, you're going to get a security message that says there's a warning about going to this website. You have to click through the advanced settings and just say it's okay to go there. Trust me, it's a safe website. It's not going to do anything bad to your computer, but for whatever reason, you're going to have to go through that process to get to their website. If you have any trouble getting to it or getting the documents that you need, contact me or someone else in our group, and we'd be happy to help you through that. So what we're looking at is degree partnerships. At this METC campus, they train military members from all of the services in various medical occupations. And so what we're looking at is building some pathways to give them the maximum credits that they should be getting based on, as I said, their education and experience. There are already some affiliations. You can see on the map there, the flags show you partnerships that are already in place, but they're looking for more partnerships to reach out to more students. You'll see here in a minute how many students they have going through their programs. So yes, there are 120,000, that's the alumni and counting, as Katie has put on the slide for you. And so we're talking about a large number of people, and it's a constant process. They are constantly training people, and depending on the medical occupation, some of them get through their programs rather quickly. Some of them are in their programs for up to a year of education and training. Many of them, though, when they finish, if they're staying in, they have an interest in getting a degree because it does help them with promotion and with other recognitions in the military. But a large number of them are also getting out as veterans and coming to our areas. And so we want to give them recognition and a head start on getting their college degree so they can get an appropriate job for them as a veteran in our communities. So let me tell you about the Kirtland experience very briefly. It started with a visit to the METC campus, and as I said, I lived down there as this was being built, but I moved away before it was completed, and so it was very exciting for me to go down and have this METC campus visit. We had an awesome tour of the facilities down there, and we also spent a good amount of time in the afternoon sitting with actual curriculum and looking at very detailed curriculum to tell us exactly what students were learning in the various programs down there. That was in February of 2017. And then I brought back my information to my campus. We started looking at it with some of our instructors and looking for programs that would make a good fit. And that took about from March through October. And we decided that we would start with one program first and then maybe explore others. And the first program that we went with that made the most sense for us was the surgical technology program. And I'll explain to you in a minute why we decided on that. And then it took a few more months to really finalize the process, and that's just a communication thing of going back and forth with METC, sharing our web link so that they can share it on their website. So January of 18 was when all of that was finished. So it takes about a year, so I would just encourage you to not be discouraged if it feels like it takes a long time, but really in the grand scheme of things, a year to get through a process like I think is pretty reasonable. So as I said, we chose the surgical technology program, and we chose that for a couple of reasons. The METC program is accredited, and it's accredited through the same agency that does the accreditation for the Kirtland surgical technology program. Students are encouraged to sit for the certification exam when they finish this program through METC as well as through Kirtland. It's the same certification exam that they sit for and the same credential that they end up with. And so then looking at the credits that would overlap and how we could give them credit. And so on the next slide, I'll show you a little more details about each of those. So this information is directly from the METC catalog for their surgical technology program, and you can see their accreditation statement. So they are accredited through CAHEP, and the credentialing information at the bottom as well, that their graduates are eligible to take the Certified Surgical Technologist exam through the National Board of Surgical Technology. So if they're taking the same exam as our students are taking. And then you can see there that the Air Force has 15 iterations per year, the Army has 4, and the Navy has 15 as well. So then looking at credit, I got with our director from our surgical technology program. We sat, we looked at the curriculum, we looked at the accreditation, we looked at the credentialing, and we decided, you know what, if they've gone through this credentialed program, if they've sat and they've taken their certification exam and they've earned that credential, then we should give them credit and recognize they have done everything they need to do for surgical technology. They don't need to take any of our surgical technology courses. So really all they need to do is complete the general education courses through Kirtland to earn their associate degree. And so that was the agreement that we came to, and that's the agreement that we shared with METC. So now I would like to turn the mic over to my colleagues at Purdue, Rich and Adam, and they're going to talk to you some more about the METC Pathways process and best practices that they've developed.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Arona. I'm the Director of Military Health and Nursing for Purdue University Global. I, like Julie, was in the military for, I'll say, 30 years. I attended as a student back in 1981 before METC was built in a dental assisting program and went on to be a dental hygienist. So I want to stop right there before I tell my story and thank you all for what you're doing in helping service members with their education. I say this because back in the day there were no pathways or programs for us that recognized our skill sets. I was able to clean teeth from the general on down, anytime, you're talking 8 to 10 patients a day. However, when I left the military and several of my colleagues who were in the same situation, our skill sets were not recognized on the outside. And we'd get a few college credits here and there for certain things, but however, it really didn't pan into much and we had to change career fields. A lot of the military programs that we have in the medical field were very similar. So ironically, in my 30 years, my last assignment was working with the METC. I was a senior enlisted advisor. And one of the projects I was tasked with was looking for universities that would recognize our skill sets and put together pathways that would provide degree plans or programs for our medics. As I retired in 2011, I came on board with then Kaplan University, and we met with leadership to put this program together. So in saying that, let's go to the next slide, the agenda. These are the things that I'll cover. Brief history of our relationship with METC. I want to talk about the program we ended up building for METC. And then I'll talk about where we are today with the pathways that we've built along with the bridge program introduction. From there, my colleague Adam Downs will introduce himself and go over the specifics of how we created the bridge programs, from the outcomes all the way down to the results. Then we'll open it up for questions. Next slide, please. Back in 2005, as you know, we were shutting down bases and trying to consolidate. It was a major project for the Department of Defense. And they established a law that required all medical training to be stationed down here in Fort Sam Houston. That meant the Navy's 5 locations, the Air Force, which was right up the street at Shepherd Air Force Base, all were joining our Army medics here at Fort Sam Houston to form what they called the largest medical training campus in the world. With that brought a lot of changes. Curriculum, standards, and a bunch of other things had to be consolidated. The number one thing that occurred during that process was the fact that our Air Force instructors had to have a 2-year degree to be on the podium to teach. Our Army and Navy did not have that standard. So in coming together, we had to get the Army and Navy up to speed. That's where Kaplan University, we met with leadership in 2012 with METC. We identified those specific needs and the concept for a speed to degree. How quickly can we get these Army and Navy instructors to meet the qualification, the new qualification to teach? And that's where we came up with the Associates of Science and Health Science. Initially, we came up with 16 pathways. And with this program, it was where most of the MOSs only needed 4 general education requirements courses to get their associates in health science. From there, it changed a little bit, and I'll talk about that a little more later as Kaplan University went to Purdue University recently. Purdue University Global purchased Kaplan earlier this year, and we'll talk about some of the changes that purchase created. From there, we went to building additional pathways. We created a pathway for the Navy Corpsmen. We valued their training and experience and put them into the ASHS program. We added pathways in surgical technology, telemetry, billing and coding in 2014. Then came the bridge programs, where we thought, okay, we're doing great with the associates program, but what happens after they get their associates? Where do they go from there? So we put together 4 pathways into a bachelor's program, starting off with healthcare administration, health science, health and wellness, and nutrition science. Last year, METC asked us to look at building a medical assistant or a pre-professional pathway. These are for folks that were going to be 4-year tours in the military and then get out. We wanted to get them qualifications, so if they wanted to find a job immediately, they had the skill sets as a medical assistant. They've been doing it on the battlefield and in the hospitals, but had no qualifications. So we built a pathway for that. And then more importantly, a pre-professional pathway for those medics that wanted to go on to nursing school to become physicians, dentists, and PAs. So we put that pathway together, and what that looked like was most of the prerequisites to get into those prestigious programs. Finally, in 2017, we added a health information management. We understood the interest of that particular field, and we built that into our bachelor's programs. So any graduate of ASHS would be able to go into one of these 5 pathways. And then finally, earlier this year, we were able to get the POI, Program of Instruction, from the Coast Guard, and we built a pathway from there for them also. Next slide. Now, I know this slide is quite wordy, but this goes back to my initial topic when we started in recognizing the skill sets of our medics. You know, it used to baffle me that these kids, when we were at war in Iraq and Afghanistan, they would go on the battlefield and they're saving lives left and right. Then they come back after deployment and they go back to their National Guard or Reserve unit and they're working at Walmart or Home Depot or some other place because their skill sets, again, were not recognized. So our objective was to be able to put that pathway together, get them a degree, and get them trained in their specialty, and it worked out well. Next slide, please. Today, we've mapped out all of the pathways from METC, all of the medic programs towards an ASHS. As I mentioned, we have 5 bachelor pathways bridged into that. We've had over 9,000 enrollments since we began in November of 2012. I mentioned us building the Coast Guard program. We've also built other MOSs now beyond this. This was our initial program with the medics, and we've gone through the entire Army inventory of MOSs and the Coast Guard also. So we're really proud of that and building other pathways outside of medical. Just wanted to throw that in there. We recently went through our 5-year recertification with the ASHS program in late 2017. At the same time, this is when Purdue University decided to purchase Kaplan University, and now we fall under Purdue University as Purdue Global. And what that did was simply add an online program to the famous, prestigious ground campus of Purdue University in Indiana. In doing that, if you look at my last bullet, we had to change our standards to the state of Indiana requirements. And Adam will talk a bit more about this in detail as he discusses our other piece here. So our 5-course offering went to a 10-course offering. We were a little upset with that initially, but these were general education requirements that the state of Indiana required. Next slide, please. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Adam Downs, who will briefly introduce himself and talk about how we got to the programs we did. Adam?
Thank you, Richard. So I'm Adam Downs. I'm the Director of Academic Solutions for Purdue Global. And my role is to help connect the requirements of our partners, whether it's military or corporate, public sector, to connect their needs to our academic programs and help facilitate that conversation between our partners and our academics so that we can either utilize our existing programs or customize our programs to help meet their needs. So what I want to talk about is the process that we went through to build the ASHS program and the process we went through to review the curriculum that was offered at METC to articulate that in for college credit. Now, one of the needs for METC when we first started this was they needed their faculty members to have that associate's degree, which Richard talked about. So our initial context of this was to create a degree that those faculty members could complete quickly, because they would be stationed down at METC but not be able to teach. And so they would be finishing their degree over the course of 10, 12 months while down at METC and not be able to teach and just be focused on that. So that was obviously not a very efficient process for METC. So we looked at our associates in medical assisting. Could we make that work for those faculty? We even looked at our bachelor's programs. Could we make that work? But we could not find a good way to make our existing programs work to solve that problem. In conversations with our dean, the concept of designing a new flexible associate's degree built specifically for METC was born. And so typically, when designing a degree, you start with the high level objectives for the degree and then work your way down from there. Program objectives to course objectives to individual course learning outcomes. But for this program, designed specifically for METC and degree completion, we had to flip that playbook. So we looked at what are the common outcomes included in the METC program? How do those match together to form a cohesive whole? Are those outcomes aligned with the industry? So we took all of those, to answer all those questions, right? We needed to delve deep into the curriculum with our faculty to figure out what were the outcomes included in each of the programs and how can we stack them together. A word I'll put out is that we were not focusing specifically on an individual occupation. We were looking at the entire spectrum of programs offered at METC. So how can we come up with a solution that works across the board for all of the occupations? So if you'll go to the next slide. The timeline that I have here that I'm going to talk about is really about the deeper process we're going to go into and how we review that curriculum. And so Richard talked about this earlier, where we have a lifespan of 5 years on credit that our faculty have reviewed. So the process that I'm going to be presenting in these next slides is from our re-review of the METC curriculum that we conducted last year. Our original program launched in November of 2012. So we started our process, formally started the process in April of 2017 because we knew our other credit decisions were going to expire in December of 2017. Informally, we had started it really in December of 2016 just to get the ball rolling, make sure there was general awareness throughout the university with all the players that we would be starting this in the following year. We wanted to have a smooth transition from that previous version of the credit to the new one. We did not want to have any gaps where students and service members would not be able to receive that credit. Within our institution, we have an articulation team of 3 people in our registrar's office. They focus specifically on supporting these type of initiatives, and they took the lead in planning and coordinating this entire process. Ron Magid from that team, he's also here on the webinar as well. So in case you have detailed questions about that process, Ron was one of the lead facilitators in that, so he's here as well if there's specific questions. One thing that I'll point out about this timeline, oh, thank you, is I have on there that we gathered the program of instructions, the POIs, to conduct this review. Our faculty have looked at and articulated a large amount of the military curriculum, as Richard mentioned, mostly Army, but some other service specific items as well. And typically, POI documents do not contain enough information to conduct a review and to really delve deep into the learning. But the POIs from METC are a bit of a different story, and that's for a couple of reasons. The first is that they contain a lot more information than most POI documents. They go further in depth about the specific hours and the learning outcomes. And the next reason, if you go to the next slide, is the accreditation factor that was mentioned earlier. METC programs, METC itself has a national accreditation, and a lot of their programs have a specialized accreditation. So we accept transfer credit from nationally accredited institutions, as well as credit from specialized accreditation, if that credit is directly related to the specialized accreditation. We also have a process in place to evaluate credit from institutions who have their courses listed as clock hours. Because of those 2 factors, the POI documents gave us what we needed to move forward. I would always encourage you to get more information if possible. You know, if METC will provide you lesson plans from their courses, that just facilitates and makes for a stronger, better review, right? The more information you can obtain, the better decisions you can make from your faculty. For us, utilizing the clock hours to credit hours using the Carnegie credit hour conversion and the accreditation factor were enough for us to be able to move forward. The POI documents has a list of hours in that training, and they classify as whether it's didactic, lab, practical, clinical, etc. Right? So one challenge I will put out that we had with this, and a conversation we had a lot of conversation about this pre-review before we put this to the faculty and then with the faculty as well, was to make sure that we categorized each of those hours on the POI correctly for our conversion, as well as how are we going to do the conversion? What are we doing with partial credit? How are we rounding? What level are we rounding this credit to a whole number? Are we rounding at an individual lesson level within the POI, or are we going to round it within the POI document as a whole? So these were all decisions that we had to make before we really delved into it. And we wanted to make sure that we had this so that once we started reviewing this, we had a smooth, seamless process to get it done. A specific example of this would be other. On the POI, you'll often see a category that says other. So what is other? How are we going to define that? And one decision that we made is we would really, that category specifically would be dependent on that POI document that we looked at and how they described that learning in the document. A lot of times other is things such as administrative hours, checking in to the base, things that may not necessarily come in or count as college credit. Other times it might be something different. So we really had to delve deep into that and make individual decisions at a POI level. You know, I actually do want to pause just for a second here just to see, are there any questions about any of that area there? If not, I'll continue to move forward here.
So far, the questions we've accumulated look like they're good to stay till the end.
Okay, great. So the next steps after we got a lot of those sort of high level pieces figured out is getting the team together. So these steps that I have on the screen seem fairly straightforward, but a lot of work went into these few items. You know, just going through and identifying the subject area required reading through hundreds of pages of documents, and then finding faculty members across that entire spectrum of subject area and arranging schedules is logistically challenging, right? And that's where our team in the registrar's office came through to help facilitate that and get that moving. But the scheduling challenge and getting all of that together and the amount of people involved in this is one of the reasons why we started this process as early as we did in April, so that we could be ready for a launch in December. In our process, we require at least 3 faculty members who are subject matter experts to review the outside curriculum. For this project, we identified a core group of 8 health science faculty members, and then a different combination of those 8 individuals were utilized to conduct the review based on their subject matter expertise and their alignment to the curriculum. And then additional health science faculty were brought in as needed for specific areas that might have been outside that core group of 8 expertise. When we conducted this review the first time in 2012, we focused really on healthcare and the health sciences. But based on that first review and other reviews that we have conducted since then with other curriculum within the services, we made the decision that we needed to expand our scope of this and include other disciplines as well, specifically general education. And if you go to the next slide, I'll provide some more details about the faculty team. So ultimately, we ended up with 10 teams that were put together. Health science, social and behavioral sciences, nursing, one specific for anatomy and physiology, because as you can imagine, there might be a lot of A&P within these programs. Arts and humanities, chemistry, composition, math, sciences, nutrition. Ultimately, there was 30 faculty members involved in this, and we had 35 meetings that were facilitated faculty review. So in this process, the 3 faculty members make those credit decisions, but those facilitated reviews are facilitated by the members of the registrar team. That team has expertise in prior learning and looking at prior learning assessment and the theory and taking non-traditional learning and correlating it to college credit and looking at depth versus breadth and generalizability and a lot of those other CALE standards that you might see. I have down here, 420 hours of faculty review, and this is just an approximation. We do know that we had 140 hours of facilitated review. That's including all faculty, right? So if 5 faculty met for 1 hour, I'm counting that as 5 hours. Right, so in terms of faculty time, we had 100 hours of facilitated review. There's 2 hours of prep for the faculty that I'm including in this number, where we assign curriculum to the faculty members to look at ahead of those reviews so that they would be prepared to go into these facilitated conversations. We did not specifically track the amount of time that the faculty members spent outside of the facilitated reviews. So that 2 hours per 1 hour review is really just a guess. And it may be a little bit on the high side in terms of that estimation. But I feel in terms of moving forward in your initiatives to do a similar mapping and to put something together is probably better to err on the side of higher rather than lower, just to make sure that you can get everything in place and you have enough time and resources to get this together. Before I go to the next slide, oh, yep, go ahead.
May I ask you to clarify, that's in total for all of the METC programs that you articulated, which was 48, correct?
Correct. So that we reviewed 16 occupations, but within those 16 occupations, the way the METC programs work is you have a consolidated core that is taught to every service. And then that's a phase 1 of the curriculum. And then a phase 2 is a service specific component. So the Navy will teach their own part. The Army will teach the piece that they need. You know, the preventive needs, for example, preventive medicine, the needs are very different in the Navy, who has folks on aircraft carriers and confined spaces. That preventive medicine is very different than the needs of the Army and their preventive medicine. So there's a common core and then service specificness component. So that's where that higher number comes from. There were 16 occupations, but it's across multiple services.
That's helpful. And I'm sort of saying that to alleviate any concerns from our audience. This project only requires them to articulate for one pathway, but certainly we hope that they will extend the work and articulate further. But I wanted to make sure nobody thought this was the number of hours everyone would be spending on one pathway.
Yeah, this is because we did, yeah, just a fair, but we looked at a lot of curriculum.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, and then what I'd also, so on our next slide, which I don't go to yet, because what I'd actually would like to do, oh, you jumped to it. All right, that's okay. If you want to go ahead and jump to that, because I think folks might have caught it. I was going to have people take a guess at the amount of credit that came in from this, but here is, to me, you know, this macro look is very shocking when I sort of look back at this and the amount of work that went into it and the end result. And I think it's a testament to the level of robustness that is included in that METC training. You know, their curriculum is top notch and their facilities are top notch, and our faculty were very impressed with the training and the entire METC program. So this 1,465 total credits, and this is quarter credits. We're on a quarter credit system. So this includes the training that I was talking about that is common to all the service branches, as well as that service specific. And this is across all of those different occupations, all put together. This is just from the curriculum documents that we reviewed. After we reviewed the curriculum to put together the mappings, so with a 252 branch occupation rank specific mappings, we combined the curriculum that we reviewed, you know, which was really the AIT or the 3-school, depending on which service and how they categorize it, that initial training into the occupation. We combined that with the ACE credit recommendation for the occupation, as well as additional training that they complete as they go through those ranks. So for Army, it's AIT, and they do structured self-development 1, structured self-development 2, advanced leaders course, senior leaders course, sergeant majors course. So we take all of those components across the lifespan of that service member and create mappings across that entire lifespan, so that any service member will have a good understanding, at least a baseline of an understanding of what their credit would be, regardless of their rank and when they did this training. So, like for example, we have the 68 whiskey, so it's an Army 68 whiskey at skill level 20. So what those 16 occupations that we reviewed turned into 252 degree plan mappings, and that includes mappings that show how our associates in health science stacks into our bachelor's in health science. And this is where I'll go back to what Richard was talking about earlier in our transition over to the Purdue University Global and the addition of those 5 courses in our ASHS. Those 5 courses that were added are all courses that are included in our bachelor's program. All general education courses are included. So while it does take longer for that individual student to get that associate's degree, it takes the same amount of time for them to get that bachelor's degree as if they transition from that associate's into the bachelor's, because all of that credit smoothly transfers over. So ultimately, we sort of traded one for the other, right? A longer associate's degree, but a shorter bachelor's because of that credit transfer from the associate's degree into the bachelor's. So that's one way that we sort of work to help facilitate that change and to still meet our regulatory requirements and to provide that pathway. 82 specific course equivalencies determined. So this is counting some courses twice. So if our, hypothetically HS 100 course was there, if there was an equivalency found in the 68 whiskey training and in the 68 hotel training, right? We counted that twice because the source is coming, it's a different source material and it's a different population that would still be receiving that equivalency. And these course equivalencies include items such as science elective, where that could come in to fulfill the science general education requirement. It also includes one of the things that we have in our program is some of our courses are modularized, where we have micro units of learning, where they, such as our composition one is broken down into, our composition one is 5 quarter credits, and then each quarter credit is one learning outcome. And each of those learning outcomes also exists as a 1 credit course. So our 5 credit course is broken down into 5 individual 1 credit courses. And some equivalencies were found to the individual outcomes within those umbrella courses, right, that could satisfy an individual unit of 1 credit courses. So that's where, there's a lot of equivalencies that came out of this through either the electives or specific courses or to those micro units of learning. And that's really where I will stop and turn this over for questions. I want to make sure we have lots of time for that. So I'll turn this back over to you.
Awesome, thank you. I can't tell you how helpful that was. I love that it was very process oriented. This is a stage that our participants are in as they're thinking about what needs to happen on their campus and with whom they need to coordinate. So I appreciate all the detail that you provided there. We do have some questions. Some are for you and some are for Julie. And then we also have a question for METC. So Keith, I'm giving you a heads up that I'm going to throw a question your way and we'll see if I can unmute you. I'm sometimes not the best with the technology, but I'm going to try my best. Before we go there, I will put a question over to Julie that was asked for you. Julie, and I know that your program is relatively new, so if you haven't transcripted credit yet, perhaps you can tell us what you've discussed as a process. The question reads, does Kirtland transcript from the Surge Tech credits as a single line on the incoming student's transcript, or does each course in the Kirtland program get listed as transfer credit?
Okay, we haven't had anyone do this yet because yes, it is new. I would have to ask my registrar specifically, but I'm thinking it would be for each class, and then but it would be transcripted as credit.
Not as transfer credit?
No, it would not be a no, they would not receive a grade or anything. It would just be as credit. So yes, it would be like articulation credit, like similar to what we do for our prior learning process.
Okay, thank you. And then I can ask at Purdue, how does that look on your transcripts when you're bringing the credit in?
It comes in as a form of transfer credit. Specifically, it's mapped as EC. Is the credit which is our categorization for experiential credit, but that's how all of our military credit is documented on our transcript is EC, and it comes in as the individual courses that we articulated, I believe, and I'll see if Ron on this who's also here has any additional information on that. But at one point in time, we did bring it in as a bulk of credit, as a lump sum within the major requirements, but that presented some challenges for some service members. specifically a lot of these service members who are going for promotion and they're trying to get promotion points, they have to submit their transcript to the education service officer or to other individuals within the military. And when they review that transcript, the amount of credit they have is a factor that can count as promotion points. But when that review is conducted, the ESO or whoever's doing that review looks to eliminate duplicate sources of credit. And when we had it there as a lump, it was causing issues because they weren't able to identify those duplicate sources of credit. And so the service members weren't getting credit for that knowledge and the credit we transferred for promotion points. So we came up with a separate process where we were submitting letters of clarification where we would outline all of that information in a letter that the service member could take to the ESO. But when we redid this whole process, we broke it down so that we wouldn't have that issue.
Katie, if I can add something else for Michigan, yep. I think it probably would be beneficial to consider this similar to the other transfer pathways that we're looking at in the state, more on the general education side of things, but if we looked at it on the occupational side, if there's overlap between different schools looking at the same programs, maybe we could make this something more of a credit that would be acceptable at all of our colleges and not just articulated into one.
That's an interesting idea, Julie. You know that I love it. I don't always get to make decisions like that, but I will definitely put that on the table for something to discuss. For those of you on the line that aren't familiar with the other work we're doing, the state of Michigan has invested in a project to coordinate faculty in selected disciplines to create multi-institutional statewide articulation agreements. And in that line of work, we're looking at more traditional college curriculum between a community college and a university. But as Julie described, we are looking to make those courses that are included in those agreements more standard across the participating institutions, and we will be using a single document that multiple universities sign on to in order to share or signal that multi-directional transferability. So I like that idea, Julie. It's probable that we wouldn't be able to make a decision like that until after the project is over and we see which pathways are actually built, but that's something for us to consider as next steps. Definitely. So we have a couple of other questions that are more specific to the project, and I am going to real quickly walk through the next steps in the project, and then we'll go to my last slide, which is going to have everybody's contact information for those of you who may want to do some follow-up afterwards. I will run through this real quick, and then Keith, I keep telling you you're on deck, so I'm going to try to unmute you in a minute to ask you a specific question for METC. Another question was posed that I think will benefit everyone, and I'll answer that in my listing here of your next steps. So the next steps for you all are, number one, to contact METC to request your curriculum plans. In this presentation today, we're calling those POIs, Programs of Instruction. I believe that the two terms are interchangeable. If I'm wrong, someone please feel free to correct me. But one of the questions that was asked was whether there would be one single point of contact for everyone in this project. And yes, indeed there is. Keith Hall, whose information will be on the next slide and who I'm going to hopefully make live here in a minute for some commentary, is our contact at METC. And he has already received a list of all of our project leads and is expecting contact from the project leads in order to request your POIs or CPs of interest. Now, typically, METC requires educators or campuses to make an educator tour in order to receive the curriculum. But the fine folks at METC have given us approval to bypass that step in the event that institutions are not able to travel. However, I'm very pleased to know that a number of our campuses participating in this project are planning to do the tour. I think it will be very useful to you in understanding and appreciating the pedagogy that happens at METC. And many of your campuses are interested in increasing enrollments of military-connected students. And I'm often asked, well, how can we get more of these students? And honestly, it doesn't sound terribly strategic, but relationship building with this community and the military-connected population is the very best way to increase your outreach and increase your enrollment of these students, because word of mouth goes a long way in the military community, not only between and among service members who've completed your programs, but also the faculty at METC. If they have a name with a face and they know that your campus is actually authentically doing these articulated pathways, you'll be top of mind as they counsel their service members who are going through their program on what kinds of post-military education options they may have. So I'll highly recommend that tour as well. It is one of the expenses that we're willing to reimburse as part of the project at the end of the day. So I will recommend that. But you are able to request the curriculum without having made that tour, and you can do that at any point now by virtue of being one of our participants. Go ahead, Julie.
Just real quick, along that same line, though, of requesting it, another question I had is if some of us are working on the same program, rather than all of us requesting the same POI, could we just have one request for that program and then share it with the schools that want it?
It's a good question. It's a good thought. Several schools have listed multiple program areas as more of an exploratory plan is the way that I gathered it when I read the letter of interest, which is not to say that you couldn't still coordinate that, but I think my preference is to keep you all contacting METC directly so that everybody has their own copy of the curriculum, but then I can help coordinate perhaps some of that sharing between and among like areas. Perhaps what I can do is send the project leads a listing of all the interest areas that each campus had requested. If anyone has a problem with that, why don't you let me know? But otherwise, my assumption is that this will function as a community of practice and that you all will be interested in sharing with one another. Do you think that works, Julie?
Sure. Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. And that was another question that was posed. I think, Julie, it was posed while you were speaking about the Surge Tech program at Kirtland. The person asked, will we get a copy? I didn't understand if that was, will you get a copy of the slides? Yes, and you'll get a copy of the recording. Or if they were asking more specifically about the curricular materials that you put together, if you might be willing to share them so that others could see what that looks like. And I guess I could ask the same question of Purdue. Do you have degree maps or anything tangible document-wise that you might be able to share with our folks or that you might be willing to share with our folks?
I can do that for Surge Tech, yes.
Yes, we have some documents as well. We have those 200 some odd pathways. So we have those some pathways documented out that we can send out as well.
Okay, I will suggest in the next slide, I'm going to have contact details, as I said, for each of the entities that's participating today. And I will suggest that campuses that would like to see those should email you all directly. That way, you're not getting superfluous requests. You can get them from the folks who need them. Thank you for being willing to share. Okay, and then what else? So we have several other webinars in the program series here. We have 3 additional webinars coming up. The next one is scheduled for October 17th at 10:30 Eastern. This will be 90 minutes, and the Council on Adult and Experiential Learning, CALE, had actually contracted with METC to create, they call it a toolkit. I think it's more like a handbook that kind of walks through what METC curriculum plans look like and how you can use the material or the information in the curriculum plans to articulate on your own campuses. So they will walk you through that in the webinar on October 17th, and they will also make that toolkit or handbook available to all of you as a tangible document, which is another cool thing because they've not made that publicly available yet to anyone else. So we've seen it, I've seen it at conference presentations and at meetings, but it's not available anywhere right now on the web for people to download. So you guys will get kind of an advanced copy of that so that you can use it for your purposes with this project. And then after that, in November, on the 8th, we have a webinar planned with Jobs for the Future and Owensboro Technical Community College in Kentucky. That will be a little bit more generally focused on how to use a industry-based credential to articulate credit. I'm hoping that they'll be able to put some healthcare flair on that since this project obviously deals with healthcare, but we felt like it was important to help you see that this is work that can extend beyond the military population and certainly beyond healthcare as well, as there are a number of other industry-based certificates and credentials that our students seek depending on their educational goals. So again, all of this information about next steps is in your invitation letter, and I would encourage you to refer to that if you need more specific detail. You'll also then be on the hook for submitting your materials to METC. You heard Julie say it took about a year to kind of get everything finalized and in place. So we are not requiring that you are an official approved DegreeBridge partner by that date, simply that you have submitted what METC needs to begin the review on their campus of approving you as a new partner. So just please note that difference or that clarification so that you know that we would still encourage you and expect that you'll continue to engage with METC so that you will be a final approved new partner, but that is not what you're required to wait for in order to get the stipend that comes with the project. You all also received a copy of the MOU that we would like you to sign to signal your commitment to the project deliverables. You'll note, if you've looked at it, there are several sections highlighted in yellow. Please fill them out for the appropriate persons on your campus in those places, and then you'll sign first and return to us. We will complete the signature, and then we will share an executed copy with everyone. And that will also collect the material we need for the financial distribution at the end of the project. Okay, so I mentioned I'm going to give you this detail here. I'm going to click in and see if I can make Keith able to talk, because Keith, we had a question about the tour, and I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about that and share anything further that you would like. So before I click to unmute you, I will pose the question. The question is how long the tour is. I am under the impression that they are one-day tours, but if you want to give us an idea of what happens during the tour and whether or not there's an opportunity to talk directly with faculty about the curriculum plans or how that works for you. So Keith, I'm going to click to unmute, and hopefully that will work. Are you there, Keith?
All right. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So actually, when colleges and universities actually set up tours, the tours normally start at the METC at 8:30 in the morning, and they normally end around 11:30 or 12 noon. And they are normally allowed to visit up to 4 programs of interest. Sometimes they have interest in developing pathways for all 4. Sometimes they just want to get an idea, just in case they want to later on build a bridge for a certain program. But normally we do up to 4 programs. If a university is very interested, then we can do up to 5. It's a tight squeeze sometimes, but we can do up to 5. Usually colleges and universities, when they come to do tours, they don't always sit down. They don't typically sit down to do meetings and so forth, but we're willing to do whatever we need to do to accommodate your interest or to accommodate your questions and so forth. So if you know in advance that you would like to get the curriculum plans or POI in advance to have reviewed them so that during your tour or after your tour you can ask specific questions, then we can manage that when we're en route from program to program, or if we need to, we can tag an extra hour or 2 in the afternoon to answer questions and so forth. But the tours are very, very straightforward. We basically start out with a briefing here at the METC headquarters, where we give you an overview of the METC. And if there are programs that are not in session or classes that are not in session, we normally have the person come to the METC headquarters to brief before we actually go and do the walking tour. But we schedule that time in the morning, because in the morning, most of the programs are physically doing training, and you can see hands-on training and so forth. So the tours are, again, very, very straightforward from 8:30 to 11:30 or 12. And if there was any need for specific questions, we try to answer those while we're walking from place to place. But if we needed to sit down with a specific program leader to ask specific questions about curriculum, we could try to set that up in advance.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Keith. And that's what I would encourage the campuses then to contact you directly if anything like that's needed. But it sounds like, too, they'll get the chance to at least see the areas where those programs are delivered and potentially meet faculty while they're on the tour anyway.
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful. Is there anything else that you wish to share while you're live on the mic here?
No, everything seems to be going well, but as I mentioned, I have seen the programs of interest that the colleges and universities have communicated. Some were directly as written in our catalog, some weren't. But for the big part, what I do is, if universities or colleges want me to, I can go to their websites. I can look at program and degree pathways that they already have, and I can basically make recommendation on which of their programs are best suited for METC programs based off of what is provided on their website. So a lot of times it's very beneficial in helping the universities understand, because sometimes in our catalog they might not understand military language and so forth. So anyway, any colleges or universities that want me to do that, I'm able to do that for them.
Thank you, Keith. I hope everyone heard that. Keith is offering to help you. And he's the one who kind of manages this process for METC. So he'll know what other campuses have done, or what kind of how people have overcome any barriers that might have presented in this process. So I would highly encourage you to contact Keith if you have need for that, if you'd like him to take a look at your catalog and see how it might match up to their catalog. And as he said, several of you in your letter of interest indicated areas of interest that were specific to your degree program. So when you're asking for the curriculum plans at METC, you'll need to make sure that you're asking for them from their catalog. So previously in the slide deck, we included a link to the METC catalog. It's on their website. If you haven't seen it yet, you can get it there through this through this PowerPoint, or I can send you a PDF copy as well. So I would encourage you to use Keith's expertise there. I did get another question clarifying about the tour, and I think I heard you say this, but please confirm. You are willing, it sounded like, to send the POIs or CPs in advance of the tour so people could review them before they visit?
Yes, I think that goes along with what Mr. Moore had said. Because they have officially communicated interest to be partners with the METC, then if they want to see the curriculum plans before they come on the tour, so that they'll be prepared to ask questions while they're here, we can do that. And if they felt the need to actually have some open dialogue with the program manager or program director, then we can try to set that up so it can be a part of their tour when they come down.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'll thank you again. METC has been very accommodating for this project, and I have just enjoyed working with Mr. Hall and Mr. Moore, his colleague, very much. I got to know Mr. Moore a couple of years ago through my work with the Multi-State Collaborative on Military Credit. And I saw him present once, and I was like, wait a minute, what'd you say? There's degree bridge partnerships? We need some of that. We need to get more of that here in Michigan. So it's been fantastic working with you all. And I know that the campuses that you've already been in touch with really appreciate how responsive you are. And I love your positive emails. You're always wishing me a great morning and a great rest of my week. And I just think you're a really great partner in this work. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to shut you down, Keith. I might.
Katie,
go ahead.
Katie, really quick. Yeah. Since while we're on the line, I just remember several of the programs actually had interest in practical nursing or nursing in general. And the METC doesn't actually teach the practical nursing course. It's actually part of the AMET Center School. But for the three biggest programs here at the METC, which is the 68 Whiskey program, which is Combat Medic Specialist, the Hospital Corpsman Basic program, and the Aerospace Medical Services Apprentice program, their curriculum is a blend of EMT, so National EMT Certification, Registry and Certification. It's actually a blend of Rapid Response Trauma Management, which is Tactical Combat Casualty Care. And then they also do nursing skills and clinical skills and so forth. So those career fields or career occupations at the METC, they blend all of those together. So depending on what branch of service it is and what the culture is within that branch of service, one of those programs might be more nursing specific. All of them focus on EMT certification, and all of them have to do the Tactical Combat Casualty Care, which is rapid trauma management. So they get all of those skill sets. So we have nursing pathways set up with different colleges and universities around the nation, but they're more so focused on RN and so forth, because the practical nurse for those programs, for those three programs, would sometimes be less than what they are interested in pursuing, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I hope that our audience understands that as well. You can develop a pathway to nursing, but it is going to be a little bit different, as Keith described, from the front end of the work. And what I have seen other campuses, some campuses have done, is they've articulated to that EMT basic, and then they have some sort of accelerated ADN or LPN program. I'm not using the right language probably, but that they can then put that service member or veteran into once they have articulated the EMT credit. Would you say that's accurate, Keith?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we've got a couple minutes left. I haven't seen any other questions come through the box, but if anybody has any final questions here, we do have a few minutes with our presenters. So now I'm doing the fun dance where you just try to talk and give people time to type. And you can certainly follow up and contact any of us through the email or telephone communications that you see on the screen. But barring any further questions, I think we can go ahead and close down for the day. Presenters, are there any final words of wisdom you want to share with our participants today?
No.
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for your interest.
Yeah, I was going to echo the same thing. This is Richard Arona again. I cannot thank you enough on behalf of the soldiers, the students that are going through METC. Big thank you to all of you for trying to find these pathways to help these young service members find their educational dreams. Thank you so much.
And this is Adam. The only point that I will add, it goes back to something that you said earlier, Katie, about the importance of word of mouth among soldiers and service members. We literally had situations where we would have a service member call us and enroll, and then just hand the phone to his buddy, and then his buddy would enroll, and then that person would hand the phone to another person and enroll. So as you're designing this, I focused a lot on the curriculum and the transfer credit, but I would also advise, don't ignore the process for the student experience as well, because you really want to make sure those students have a good, smooth, seamless experience. Otherwise, that word of mouth will work for you the other way. So I would also put that out there.
That's helpful, thank you. And for everyone's awareness, certainly your campus will have the opportunity to do your own marketing and outreach and create any kind of web pages you want about these programs as they get developed. But we will also be sharing information about your progress with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, which already has a web page that is focused on veterans and military personnel to share accelerated academic pathways in the state. So I'm hoping that, and I know that because I've had some verbal conversation with them, they will plan to include information about your bridge programs. I don't know how, whether it's going to be embedded in the database that they're developing for military credit for the state, or if it'll be a separate page. But I wanted to let you know that that is an opportunity to have information sort of aggregated in one place, because many service members are looking for that. They're looking for one spot in the state where they can kind of review their options for education. So hopefully that will help as we come down the pike as well. And again, I'll thank you guys. I'm really very excited about everything that we've discussed today. I hope that the project participants have a better understanding of what we're asking for, and are equally as excited to do this work. I'm the wife of a veteran, some of you know that, who has been for 25 years looking for his post-military career. He's had a great career, it's been varied, but if he had had more articulated pathways from his military experience, perhaps he would have found that that final career post-military maybe a little sooner. So again, as a military family member, I will thank you all for your commitment to this work, and to our presenters just for all of your knowledge and sharing and willingness to give information as people connect with you after the program. It is much appreciated. For those of you on the line from the project, I am going to be recording and converting that recording over relatively quickly. I will email. I'm planning to only communicate with the project leads, just because it will get a little bit confusing. I think if your campus teams are hearing from me, my expectation is that you are managing your own campus team, and I will be sharing information pertinent to the project with each project lead, with the expectation that you're sharing it as needed with your campus contacts. So that'll be true for today's recording. I will send you the link, I will send you the deck of slides, and then you will now have access to these folks' emails, so you can contact them if there are any more specific documents you'd like to request from them or questions you want to pose after the fact. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and wish you all a good rest of the week. Please be in touch if there's anything I can do for you, and have a great day.